Okay, so this is the knife with the handle all done, polished up. Time to make the sheath for it. This is the template I started out with. Started out making a center line with the knife up like so, and you just roll it over and you eyeball about 3/4 of an inch around your blade. Roll it over the other way, eyeball the same, and then I like this pattern for doing guards. It allows me to put a snap in and allows space for the guard to sit, and it holds it nice and secure. So with the paper template, I just traced it out on my leather and cut it out. I'm going to use a scything knife. I'm going to go ahead and scythe down the loophole for your belt. This helps it sit more flush when you gotta turn it down. Also, the depth of my snaps, I gotta scythe this down a little bit. Helps the flaps flex a little bit, and helps my snaps actually grab correctly. And then to help the leather fold, I'm going to scythe down and just thin out the center section here. Okay, with that thinned down, it helps the leather to be able to bend. Now we're going to take an edging tool. You can see the cutting edge is set down in there, and this rounds over the edges, makes a nice clean look when you're done. Alright, now we're ready for the leather dye. This is an alcohol-based leather dye. Comes in several different colors. This is black. You can get green. You kind of see the color of green on here. Comes in different shades of brown. This is a dark brown. Used up all my tan yesterday. And this dye will stain your fingers really quickly. You're just going for a good, even saturation. Alright, so leather dye's done for now. Now that the leather dye saturated the leather, it's a lot more pliable. So I'm just going to go ahead and set my grease in real quick. Just tap it a little bit with the hammer. Gotta be careful not to tap it too hard, especially if the leather is too dry, it'll crack it. So at this point, I'm going to come in with my hole punch. Punch them straight through both layers. That way they match up. When they're done, you got a good clean hole all the way through. Alright, now I'm ready to get my glue out. This is bridge cement. If you don't have a business license, you can't. You have to get the no toluene. It's the stuff I prefer. It's not as toxic. If you have a business license and you get the stuff with the toluene, a lot of people say it holds better, but I don't notice much of a difference. You do have to use MEK to thin it. So I just put a real little bit of MEK in here. This is pretty nasty shit. This is the brush I use. It's got a little bit of glue in it. So I use the MEK to loosen up the glue that's dried in there. Wipe off any old glue. And now I take a little bit of glue on my brush. I'm going to add it to the area that I'm going to sew. And I'm just going to press it down so I can see where it's going to lay. And this is a lot like contact cement, where you have to get glue on both surfaces and let it just tack up. Now that's good and tacky. Go over here and set it with the hammer. Now we're ready to stitch. You can do this by hand, but I've been fortunate enough to have made enough money this year to afford a Tippmann boss. I hold both strings when I start. And I go over the first row of stitches to lock them all together. So you can see that's all stitched together. Some of my areas have lightened up, so I got to re-dye those. But I'm ready to set the snaps now. Okay, this is the snap set. So I'm going to do, I always like to do the hard one first. Set the top snap in. It's going to be that die. Alright. Snaps on. Got a good hold on it. Just flip this guy over. Doing this over the leg of my table, so I got a good surface to hammer on. So now I'm ready for the welt. I got a piece of welt already cut out. I use this tool to do it. It's set at about 3/4 of an inch. It's got a little razor blade it sets in, and you just run it down your leather. So I'm going to go ahead and Trim that guy off. Just get a good visual, walking it around to the end. And then I gotta put some little relief notches in here. Helps the leather to bend smoother around the arc of the cutting edge. I put this in. It protects the stitches from the sharp blade of the knife, so the stitches will go down in here, so the sharp blade of the knife will rest on this part of the welt. Keep it from ever cutting through the stitches. I just use my hammer to lightly tap it and make sure it's all glued down. Some people use a knife to trim up this edge. I use a 36 grit belt. Gotta keep it nice and square. Now we got a nice clean edge. Now we can come in with our edging tool. And this tool, it's got a little cutter on it, and it cuts a nice little groove for the stitches to sit in. So the stitches will sit down in that groove real nice. Okay, so the stitching's all done. Took about 2 minutes. It'd take normally about a half an hour to do this by hand. If you are going to do it by hand, take, this is a triple lot leather sewing needle. It's not sharp, but it's pointy. When you're pushing it through the leather, it'll go through your hand. So you take, this is a wax thread, 7 strands. You put a needle at each end. This one has obviously been cut off after sewing by hand. And you just take your thread, you put it through the needle, and then you open the thread back up. Like so. And you put your thread back through it. And this will lock it in, so when you're pulling it through your sheath, your thread's not going to pull through your needle. And then after each needle goes through and comes back, and that locks it together by hand. And you want to make sure you pull them good and tight, so you got a nice tight set stitch. So after it's been stitched, take my little spur tool, and this sets the stitch down real nice in the grooves. Okay, so the stitching's all done. Took about 2 minutes. It'd take normally about a half an hour to do this by hand. If you are going to do it by hand, take, this is a triple lot leather sewing needle. It's not sharp, but it's pointy. When you're pushing it through the leather, it'll go through your hand. So you take, this is a wax thread, 7 strands. You put a needle at each end. This one has obviously been cut off after sewing by hand. And you just take your thread, you put it through the needle, and then you open the thread back up. Like so. And you put your thread back through it. And this will lock it in, so when you're pulling it through your sheath, your thread's not going to pull through your needle. And then after each needle goes through and comes back, and that locks it together by hand. And you want to make sure you pull them good and tight, so you got a nice tight set stitch. So after it's been stitched, take my little spur tool, and this sets the stitch down real nice in the grooves. And then I'm going to take my leather die, dye my edge here. Let it soak in a little bit. This is gum amalgame. It works for sealing the edge of leather. If you can't get it, so it's kind of gross, but you can use your spit. It'll do the same thing. This is a lot more sanitary and less gross. So we saturate that edge. You can do this by hand, but this is a clean cotton wheel. There's nothing been added to it. I use it only for doing edges. And you get a nice sealed edge on your leather, so no moisture is going to go through and break it apart. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on all these edges. I'm going to get inside here, seal all this up inside, seal this end. Okay, so the knife sheath is done. I took bronze shoe polish, polished it up for a nice shiny look. Knife fits in there real nice. Snap works out real nice. Got a nice area for the guard to sit real nice on your hip. That's it. My next video is going to go over how to sharpen this, how you can sharpen it at home, and general knife care. Thanks for watching.